Hi all you lovely kings, queens, and in-betweens, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Elaine, and today I'm going to be finishing my review and summary of Brandon Sanderson's Rhythm of War, the fourth book in the Stormlight Archive. We have finally made it to part 5, and I'm going to jump right back into things with the summary. Part 5, Knowing a Home of Songs Called Our Burden. Chapter 98, An Unwholesome Shade. Dalinar moves through a battlefield after his people's victory. He realizes he is a soldier who had lost his desire to kill. The Minx speaks to him, acknowledges that the War of Amul is over now. Unless the enemy pours resources into his troops, which he feels would be wasteful, Dalinar and his armies will secure Amul within the month. The Mink reminds Dalinar of his promise before departing. They will secure the tower, then Alethkar, then Herdaz. Dalinar realizes that if they can't retake the tower, everything fell apart. The loss of the tower was a major setback when it came to reaching Dalinar's true goal, frightening Odium enough that he'd be willing to make a deal. Sigil and Stargyle, a Lightweaver, come to make a report with a few other Windrunners. Stargyle creates a light-weaving of Ishar's troops. They don't appear very disciplined to Dalinar, although they had been quite successful in battle. Dalinar notices their ruler, Ishar, an older Shin man. Szeth is transfixed by the sight of the Herald, Ishar, most often. The Heralds were all depicted as Alethi men and women. The light weaving fades. Dalinar realizes they found Ishar and that he's waiting for him. Dalinar instructs them to do another scouting mission before reporting to him. Dalinar wants to speak with Yasna. He intends to meet with Ishar and discover what he knows. Chapter 99, Not Bound. Yasna speaks to Wit, her partner, whom she doesn't trust, about how to defeat Odium. Wit suggests aiming for a draw. He had drafted a contract regarding Dalinar's contest with Odium. Should Dalinar prove victorious, Odium is to retreat to damnation for 1,000 years. But if Odium should prove victorious, he must remain within their system, but gets to do as he wishes with Roshar. All monarchs will submit to him, as will the Radiants who serve Dalinar. Wit thinks it's for the best because they'd be limiting their losses by containing Odium in the Rosharan system despite the contest's outcome. Yasna is uncomfortable with the weight afforded the contest by the contract. Wit thinks it's best to ensure the enemy can't utterly lose in order to win. Waiting another 1,000 years to try again won't upset the enemy. Wit asserts that Odium can be beaten. He thinks he's smarter than he actually is, and spent too much time trying to convince Dalinar to be his champion. Odium bet too much on the Blackthorn, and must be searching for a new champion who can replace him and legitimately win the war. A contest won't just be about who can stab the hardest, but about the hearts of mortals. He asks if she can trust those she fights with, but claims that with the contract in place and the assurance that Odium can't break free of the system no matter the trial's outcome, Yasna won't have to trust their hearts because he'll be there. Yasna fears Wit's destruction at Odium's hands. He says they will add a clause within the contract naming me as a contractual liaison for honor, whom Dalinar represents. This will protect me from Odium's direct attacks for the life of the contract. He will have to abide by those terms, as they are part of the promise Ray's made by taking up the Shard of Odium. To fail that promise would give others an opening against him, and said failures have killed gods before. Odium knows it, so do this and I can help you openly. As myself. That's on 1081. Yasna wants to know who he truly is, but claims to be someone who wisely turned down the power the others all took, and in so doing gained freedoms they can never have again. I, Yasna, am someone who is not bound. That's on 1081. Yasna knows he is both eternal and older than a Spren. Wit admits to liking her for several reasons, which include her intelligence and paranoia. Chapter 100, Watchers at the Rim. The tower's Spren wakes Kaladin. She's extremely weak. She explains that the enemy found the last node, located in the model of the tower in the infirmary room, and that they plan to kill all the Radiants soon. She also asks that Elaine be sent to her. Kaladin wakes Teft and tells him what is happening. Kaladin admits that they need to try and rescue the Radiants now. Teft is to get Lift ready to wake them. Kaladin is to lure the guards away and distract the pursuer, and Teft is to take care of any guards who don't get out of their way. David arrives and says the sibling spoke to him too, that he's going to meet Elaine, who is upset about something Venli said. Kaladin wants David to tell Elaine about the plan and for the pair of them to tell Navani what's happening before going into hiding. Kaladin intends to escape with the Radiants, retrieve Dalinar, and then return for them. David retreats to carry out the plan. Kaladin tells Teft to escape out the window if something goes wrong. Their current plan was for the Windrunners to use their powers to help them climb down the tower's walls, while another non-Windrunner Radiant was strapped to their backs. Kaladin instructs Teft to escape rather than make a hopeless stand, so he can get word to Dalinar if he feels he cannot help anyone else to escape. Teft tells Kaladin to run if he runs, asserts that the Pursuer will be waiting for Kaladin at the node. This is a trap, plain and simple. What the enemy doesn't know is that we don't care about the node. We're trying to free the Radiance. So distract him a little, yes, but then run and let them have their storming fabrial. Give me an oath, lad. We can't do anything more in this tower. We need to reach Dalinar. I'm going to head that way with as many Radiants as I can rescue. You've got my back, right? That's on 1084 to 1085. Kaladin says he always will. I swear it. Get as many of the Radiants out as you can and then run. Once you do, I'll follow. That's on 1085. Chapter 101. Undertext. Dalinar and Yasna meet with Yanagon and Nura. Yasna announces that she feels they don't have much of a chance of recovering Urithiru because fabrials don't work near it, etc. Dalinar suggests an assault through Shadesmar and other strategies, but is shot down by Yasna. Yasna thinks they should be discussing how to support their forces stationed in southern Alethkar against the Vedans, etc. The others don't want to abandon the tower so easily. Dalinar suggests meeting with Ishar and recruiting him. He thinks the Herald may be the secret to saving the tower, despite the letters which they have received from Ishar, which Yasna describes as not encouraging. Dalinar wishes to speak to him personally. Nura suggests capturing Ishar in order to speak with him instead. Dalinar explains that he has put the Mink in command of the army and about the creation of the contract. He feels that until the contract goes through, he has to do something else to help. In this case, sway Ishar to their side and see if he can teach Dalinar how to restore the Oath Pact and rescue the tower. The meeting ends, but it is agreed that Dalinar will go to Ishar. He must prepare for a trip to Tukar. Yanagon asks for word of lift should Dalinar learn anything of her. Dalinar gives Yasna his completed handwritten version of Oathbringer. He wants Yasna to write the undertext. Commentaries left by a woman beneath the text for future readers. Yasna reluctantly agrees to do it, although it will take her some time. They both know both their actions with Oathbringer will lead to, at the very least, a revision of the old religion. Chapter 102. High Storm Coming. Venli and her friends are online at the Oath Gates. She wonders why Raboniel is manipulating her into finding the listener remnants. The Oath Gates exchanges are put on hold when Vyre runs off. As the high storm approaches, those waiting seek shelter. Venli gives her writ and the map, which would lead the way to the other listeners, to Mazish. She intends to return to the tower and smuggle some of the humans out. Venli tells her friends of her plan to bring the surgeon and his entire family with them and take them to their people in the Shattered Plains. Her friends agree. They think having Kaladin along would be useful. Venli instructs them to wait until the storm passes. If she hasn't returned, they're supposed to use the Oath Gate to get to Kholinar, where she will find them. Venli heads inside to stop Elaine from going through with his plan. Navani mopes in her office. She knows Raboniel has found the tome that could kill Radiant Spren. Navani prays for guidance. Moash comes to kill her. He feels it's the best way to distract Dalinar. Raboniel won't let him. Moash says he has been ordered by Odium. Raboniel disagrees. He had been ordered to come to her. She needs him to fix one of her problems, Stormblessed. Raboniel instructs Moash to kill him. He says it's not possible. Raboniel gives Moash a dagger and instructs him to kill Kaladin Spren in order to deprive Kaladin of power. Moash asserts he can't kill him, but agrees to ruin Kaladin and keep him from interfering in exchange for Navani. Raboniel agrees as long as he destroys the final node. She feels the Pursuer is trying to draw Kaladin out by delaying its destruction. Moash accepts and begins to head out, but is stopped by Navani calling him a monster and traitor. Moash feels no sympathy. He feels she didn't do enough to help innocent people, claims that she has no idea what the day will cost him. Moash bursts a light with Stormlight and flies off. Navani continues to pray. She locates the dagger Raboniel had used to kill her daughter. It maintains a small charge of anti-void light. Kaladin heads toward a trap. He senses still as he nears the breakaway and is reunited with her. Kaladin tells her what is going on. She tells him a high storm is coming, and that she feels sad and cold because of their time apart. Kaladin understands. Kaladin finds the Pursuer in the atrium, blocking the way to the infirmary. The Pursuer moves in for the kill. Chapter 103. The Legend You Live. Kaladin begins fighting, drawing most of the guards from the infirmary. A storm form remains. Teft manages to render it unconscious as Lift heals him during their fight. Lift and Teft enter the infirmary. Teft seals the door and begins looking for the surgeon when Lift screams. A body had emerged from beneath the sheet, startling her. Moash had used his sharp blade to catch her thighs, ruining her legs. Kaladin engages the Pursuer. He knows he only needs to give Teft and Lift enough time to carry out their plan. Kaladin vows to kill the Pursuer over and over again, destroying the legend he had crafted around him. Eventually, the Pursuer will be known as the Defeated, the creature who could never beat Kaladin. Moash kicks Lift toward the wall. She has been rendered unconscious. Teft notices Kaladin's family has been bound and gagged. He realizes they had stumbled into a trap. Moash engages Teft. Teft is armed with a long knife, and Moash has the assassin's honor blade, the one that had murdered Gavilar. Chapter 104. Full of Hope. Elaine is recognized by a guard while trying to carry out the plan. As a result, he and David are led farther away from their goal as a guard takes them to confirm they're allowed to deliver water to where Navani is. He knows that they will have to find a way to get him out of his current predicament if the sibling wants him. Kaladin taunts the pursuer as they continue to fight. Kaladin calls him the defeated one, announces that he does not fear the pursuer, etc., loud enough for all of their onlookers to hear. Kaladin raises his knife over the pursuer, causing him to flee into his fourth and final body. Kaladin announces he is death as they prepare to continue fighting. Bentley makes her way to the atrium and realizes she is too late. Elaine and his friends had already begun to carry out their plan. Kaladin is fighting the pursuer. Bentley discovers that she really wants to help but can't do anything about the fight. She had to think about Elaine, the surgeon, and his family. Bentley speaks to Leshwi, who explains that the pursuer has used all of his husks and will need to run and renew himself but won't because the fight is being watched and Kaladin is clearly in control. The human appears strong and immortal, the fused small. Tef notices that Lift is awake. She's dragging herself toward another Radiant. Tef knows he needs to keep Moash's attention. He asks why Moash turned traitor. Moash claims it was peace. Moash kills a resting Radiant, forcing Tef to fight him openly. After taking an injury to his side, Tef tries to surrender and offers to wait for Kaladin. Moash does not accept. Tef realizes he is full of hope. Moash stabs Fenderana with the dagger. She shrinks, her essence burning. Tef is in agony. He collapses near the white spot in the sand Moash had scattered. His friend's remains. Moash is glad he can't feel sorrow anymore, explains that he resents how eagerly Tef followed Kaladin and Kaladin's love for him. Moash calls himself Silence, the quiet that eventually claims all men. Tef denounces Moash can never have what he has, the knowledge that he is loved. Tef dies, filled with hope. He had been stabbed through the neck by Moash's blade. Chapter 105, Children of Passions. The high storm rages. Kaladin tells the pursuer to flee, although he will never stop chasing him. Kaladin hopes the others were given enough time to be freed, but doubts they can escape through the storm. Still knows something is wrong. They should have come this way to escape by now. Kaladin challenges the pursuer to protect his reputation, so he can go see what's going on. With the help of Navani's device, Kaladin sends the pursuer into the window, injuring him. Kaladin commands him to flee. The pursuer obeys, although his title had been lost. The humans begin chanting for Kaladin. Kaladin retrieves the device, notices the infirmary door has opened, but no one is awake. Tef's body drops from above. Kaladin knows he's dead. Moash lands nearby as Kaladin cries over Tef's corpse. Moash instructs those waiting to leave him be. Kaladin has been broken and will prove useless now. Moash suspects Raboniel must have found the final note earlier but delayed mentioning it so she could continue her research. He destroys it. Lift had been bound and gagged and placed beside Kaladin's family. Moash had been forbidden from killing Lift since Odium was interested in her. Moash drags Liren into the atrium and gives him to the pursuer. The Fused is instructed to kill Liren in front of his son should Kaladin regain his senses. The pursuer is instructed not to kill Kaladin despite his wishes. Moash doesn't want him awakening to vengeance. He feels the only hand that can kill Kaladin is Kaladin's own. Moash eyes Kaladin's pain, but feels nothing. Moash is satisfied he has reached his potential, instructs the Fused not to ruin things, and heads off to kill the queen. Navani awaits her chance. She can hear only whimpers from the sibling. Soon, she notices that the shield was down. The final note had been destroyed and the sibling was exposed. Raboniel orders her guards away and enters the room with the crystal pillar, alone. Navani activates one of her pain reel traps before creeping after Raboniel. Navani notices that the sibling's corruption is nearly complete. Raboniel instructs Navani to run with a copy of her notebook and her anti-void light plate. Navani wonders why Raboniel is letting her go. Moash will soon return to kill the queen, but their deal won't be broken if Navani escapes on her own. Navani won't leave the sibling, exposes the dagger. Raboniel suggests Navani run anyway. She can't defeat a Fused. Navani offers Raboniel the dagger in exchange for returning to her room to wait together. If Moash wins his fight against Kaladin, she will give in to him, but if Kaladin wins, Raboniel is to leave the sibling. They can discuss as they wait. Raboniel agrees and takes the special dagger. The pair begin to make their way back to Navani's room. Raboniel activates Navani's trap. Chapter 106, 100 Discordant Rhythms. Kaladin feels defeated. He couldn't protect those he loved. He is claimed by a sense of numbness. Raboniel collapses, in pain, dropping the dagger. Navani works through the pain, grabs the dagger and stabs Raboniel with it. Raboniel doesn't die immediately. The dagger hadn't contained enough light. Raboniel instructs Navani to take the notebook and run before Vyre returns. Raboniel knows she will die. She can no longer hear the rhythms. Her soul is perishing. Again, she instructs Navani to run because the war must end. Navani retrieves her notebook. She realizes it's a way to end the war since it contains contains the secret to permanently killing the fused and radiant Spren, that she needs to smuggle it out of the tower. It was only a copy, the original probably having been sent to Kholinar to be given to Singer military leaders. Navani remarks that Raboniel was looking for a way to end the war, but didn't care who won. Raboniel denies it. She wants the Singers to win, but declares that the humans winning is better than an endless war. Again, Raboniel instructs Navani to run. Navani is struck by a throwing knife, next to her right breast. Moash had returned. Navani fears Kaladin is dead. Everyone watches Kaladin, consumed by his grief. Timber urges Venli to show Leshwi what she is. Venli won't. The pursuer feels as though the vigil is stupid and shoves Lirin over to Leshwi. Leshwi frees Lirin, claims the pursuer's legacy is dead because he ran from Kaladin. He is the defeated one. The pursuer denies it and decides to prove himself. Realizing what he intends, Leshwi hands Lirin to another heavenly one and tries to stop the pursuer but fails. The pursuer attacks Kaladin, who howls before driving his enemy into his final body. Stormblessed's eyes glow with a yellowish-red cast as the pursuer orders his soldiers to attack Kaladin and kill the other Radiants. The soldiers shy away from Stormblessed, forcing their master to act alone. Kaladin uses his powers to stick the fuse to the window and then rip the pursuer's head off. Then, he makes his way toward the heavenly one holding his father. The pursuer's men gather around his corpse. He had died to Kaladin twice. They recall their orders. Kaladin was out of reach, but they could kill the slumbering Radiants. Kaladin follows the fuse who held his father, and the two had followed her through the tower. Kaladin bests two of them before bursting onto the top of the tower into the storm. The last heavenly one holds his father, so announces she had forgotten the words. As Kaladin nears, the enemy panics and throws Lirin into the storm. Kaladin watches for a moment before jumping after him. Chapter 107, Uniting. Navani moves away from Moash, who comments on how he killed a friend earlier, but felt no pain. He has freed himself and his eyes, become the best version of himself possible. He intends to bring Navani silence next, to make her pay for her past actions. Moash is stopped in his approach by Raboniel's hand on his foot, an attack in which she stabs him repeatedly with the dagger Navani had used on her. It begins draining Moash of Stormlight. Navani realizes Raboniel is trying to buy her time. Navani moves away and calls to the sibling. She hears the rhythm of war. Lyn flies Dalinar toward Ishar. The Stormfather appears beside him and informs him that Tanavast's son has entered the storm for the final time. It's something far worse than Kaladin's escape. Dalinar asks the Stormfather to show him. Kaladin falls through the storm, Syl weeps that she has forgotten the words. Her fingers grip his hand. Kaladin feels sorry for himself. He couldn't save those he had intended to. Kaladin whispers that he is not strong enough as he closes his eyes and lets go of Syl. Dalinar watches Kaladin's descent. He realizes Kaladin had given up. He wonders what they can do, wants to help. The Stormfather insists they can only watch. Dalinar asks the Stormfather to slow time to give Kaladin more time. The pursuer's men turn toward the Radiants. The human onlookers defend them and are slaughtered. Venli asks Leshwi if this could be prevented. Leshwi says she needs Raboniel's authority in order to do so. Venli argues that Raboniel had wanted the Radiants to be preserved. Leshwi informs her that things had changed. Last night, Raboniel had claimed that she no longer needed them for her tests, after one had been brought to her. The remainder are now a danger and liability, in Leshwi's mind, should they wake. Leshwi doesn't agree with what is happening either. Venli asks if they can do better. Some of the other singers hadn't joined in the slaughter. On Timber's insistence, Venli shows Leshwi what she is by drawing in Stormlight. Venli begins to glow. Leshwi is startled and hums to destruction. She asks Venli what she has done. Kaladin enters the place between moments and speaks to the Stormfather. Kaladin claims to have forgotten the words, asks if they could mean anything if he doesn't feel them. Kaladin asks if he can lie in order to swear an ideal. He claims he has to go, but knows it is a lie. Wonders if the reason why he can't say the words is because it feels like too much. The Stormfather doesn't seem pleased. He asks Kaladin if he would force misery upon Syl again. Kaladin wonders, begins to struggle, then realizes he is too weak. Dalinar realizes the Stormfather's words weren't enough. He wants to give them more time, but the Stormfather says they cannot. Dalinar realizes they are in the place where the Stormfather causes visions to occur. Time sometimes moved in particular ways in visions. Dalinar forges a bond. Dalinar connects and unites him. Chapter 108, Moments. Kaladin has a vision of the day Tien was killed. He had gone to fight with two frightened messenger boys so they wouldn't be alone and could have someone to help them feel courageous. The vision fades and Tien is there for Kaladin as he had once been there for the messenger boys. Tien comforts Kaladin and offers him a new perspective. He should think about how lucky both he and Teft were to be able to help one another when Teft was still alive instead of focusing on his inability to protect his old friend. Teft closes with, if the enemy kills us, he simply dropped us off at a place we were going anyway. We shouldn't hasten it, and it is sad. But see, you can't take our moments, our connection, Kaladin, And those are things that really matter, and by giving him a small wooden horse he had crafted, that's on 1140. Kaladin calls for Syl, reaches for her, pulls her close. Syl is worried she has forgotten the words and can't help. Kaladin says she is helping by being there. The pair re-enter the real world and Kaladin realizes he knows the words, has always known them. Kaladin says, "I accept it, Stormfather. I accept that there will be those I cannot protect," on 1040. Syl gasps. The words had been accepted. Kaladin acknowledges that they could not save Teft or Tien, but they can still save his father. The sky explodes with 1,000 pure lights. Chapter 109, Emulsifier. A bright light floods in through the window. Venli informs Leshwi that she has sworn the first ideal of the Radiance. Leshwi is happy the Spren have come back to them, forgiven them. Leshwi asks Venli to ask Timber about her old Spren friend, Raya. Timber doesn't know her, doesn't think many of the older Spren survived the human betrayal. Venli explains that her Spren has friends who want to try bonding with their kind again. The fighting around them hasn't stopped. Venli isn't sure what to do. She's wavering between two different worlds, but Leshwi knows. She tries to put an end to the fighting with her words. When the fighting continues, she joins in, fighting the other singers alongside her troops. The sibling, although weak, shows Navani a vision of where the rhythm is coming from, the singers and humans fighting in the atrium to protect the fallen Radiants. Navani realizes an emulsifier is present, a common purpose. The fused, regals, and humans were fighting to protect the helpless. Before the vision fades, Navani spots Elaine. The sibling acknowledges that he's too far and it's too late. Moash is close to finishing Raboniel off. Navani asks the sibling to bond with her. The sibling refuses. Navani isn't worthy. Dabeed, Elaine, and their guards reach the atrium. The guards flee when they see the fighting. The humans and their allies win. Some troops flee, leaving the injured and dying in their wake. Elaine realizes Leshwi appears to be in charge as he urges Dabeed to help him with the injured. Kaladin had trained them both as field surgeons. Eventually, they gather a group in Hasina to get everyone in order, and Hasina informs Elaine that Kaladin had gone after Lirin. Elaine gets more of the story from the other humans, is led to Teft by some of the men Kaladin had been helping with their trauma. Elaine and Dabeed are saddened by the death. Dabeed informs Elaine that Lift is in the infirmary, unconscious, her legs dead. She can't heal herself. Elaine discovers the humans and singers squabbling. Leshwi wants them to submit so that everything that happened won't be viewed as rebellion. The humans don't want to. Elaine silences everyone and gets them to listen to him since the singers infused acted treasonously and against Odium, and the humans are in danger, and they can't escape without his help. Also, he's from a group of listeners who escaped Odium's control. Elaine discovers that Venli is a Radiant. Elaine explains that the group needs to get going. Odium won't stand for a rebellion among his own, so you singers are going to come with us. We're going to grab the Radiants and we're going to carry them out onto the plateau, or we'll escape via the Oath Gates to the Shattered Plains. That's on 1145. Elaine promises to get the singers infused out of any trouble they may face with the humans. Gather up our wounded, grab those Radiants, and let's get going. Before Raboniel knows there was a rebellion, I want all involved parties, human and singer, out of this tower. Go! That's on 1145. The group sets to work. Venli is amazed Elaine ordered the fused around. Once the group has been gathered, Elaine begins to lead them away and learns that Venli doesn't have a blade to operate the Oathgate like he thought. But they can't stop. They have to keep moving. Chapter 110, Reborn. Kaladin, reborn, pierces the darkness as a lance of light. He is surrounded by happy Windspren, whom he had instructed to find his father. They part the storm. Kaladin nears his father and reaches for him. Navani feels herself worthy and asks the sibling to bond with her. She begins saying the words. The sibling won't. Moash kicks Raboniel away from him. Her body is limp. Navani begins humming. She finds the tone of anti-void light as she presses her hand to the pillar. The song causes some of the darkness surrounding the sibling to retreat, for Moash to ache and halt his approach. The sibling says she can hear the tone of her mother, but not her father. Navani begins to sing Honor's song. The pillar vibrates as the sibling sings Cultivation's song, the pure sound of lifelight. They adjust their songs until they are in harmony. The sibling announces that they have sung her song, the rhythm of the tower. They had found their emulsifier, the common ground between humans and Spren. The sibling claims that was why she was created. Moash grabs Navani and prepares to kill her. The sibling accepts Navani's words. Power flows into Navani, who begins to heal as she and the sibling create light. She prepares to face Moash. Lirin is rescued by his son, a shard bearer. Kaladin apologizes to his father. They're both correct, for them. Kaladin finds the Shash glyph Noril had painted on his father's forehead. Lirin apologizes to Kaladin. He should have shown faith in him. Lirin brushes away Kaladin's hair to look at his brands and finds scabs flaking away from Kaladin's skin. The brands had fallen. His skin was like new. After the pair finish making up, Kaladin insists that they need to return to protect the people of Ur-Thru. Chapter 111, Unchained. Dalinar leaves the Stormfather's vision. He continues on his journey with Szeth, Sigzil, and a band of Windrunners toward Ishar's camp. When they arrive, Sigzil goes to speak with Ishar, the man who had discovered how to travel between worlds, leading humans to Roshar. First reports that Ishar doesn't appear sane, claims to be the Almighty, and is waiting for the chance to battle Odium's champion, whom he feels is Dalinar himself. Since he's willing to talk, Dalinar and his group touches down so Dalinar can speak with him. Ishar greets Dalinar as Odium's champion. Dalinar denies the title and asks to be his ally. Ishar doesn't believe Dalinar's lies and denies being Ishar any longer. He is the Herald of Heralds, the sole bearer of the Oath Pact. He wishes to absorb Odium's power and become a god among gods. Dalinar informs him that he spoke to Ash and that Talon is injured. She has requested assistance in restoring him, that Jezrien is dead, Ash's father. Ishar says he was prepared for the lies, the things that prove Dalinar's identity, capturing Ur-Thuru, summoning the Cursed Storm, etc. Ishar thinks the end is near and calls for a fight. Ishar summons the Bondsmith's honor blade. Szeth calls it his father's sword and asks where the herald claimed it, and what he had done with his father. Ishar approaches to attack Dalinar. Elaine and the rebels make their way through the tower, losing some members while gaining others, family members of many of the rebels. Elaine knows they are being watched by the Kremling that harbored a Voidspren. As the band is making its way through the market, Stormform lightning strikes sound, causing the market-goers to flee. Deepest ones in Stormforms approach the company. Leshwi acknowledges she could not have talked everyone out of their current predicament because he knows what had transpired. The singers are humming the rhythm of executions. She knows that those who come weren't sent by Raboniel, but Odium, who wants her to know she will be tormented upon her return to Braze. She intends to stand and fight with the others. Elaine asks Venli if there are Spren like hers who would bond other singers. Venli says yes, but she sent them away for their safety. The timber says Rlain is spoken for. The room grows dark. It begins to shine as crystals grow out of Rlain's feet, like stained glass windows covering the floor. They showed a figure rising in blue glowing shard plate, and a tower coming alight. Keep fighting, a voice said in his head. Salvation will be, Rlain, listener, bridger of minds. I have been sent to you by my mother at the request of Renarin, son of Thorns. I have watched you and seen your worthiness. Speak the words and do not despair. That's on 1156. Sigzil blocks Ishar's attack. Ishar asks Dalinar to fight him. Dalinar won't. He has no weapon and claims it is not yet time for the Battle of Champions. The Windrunners attack Ishar in a wave. He defends himself easily. The Stormfather claims Ishar is an average fighter amongst the heralds. Talon was the best. That Ishar's skill as a duelist is not as great a danger as the fact that he has recovered his honor blade and become a bondsmith unchained. Ishar tethers each of the Windrunners to the ground with glowing rope that drains them of their stormlight and forces it into the earth. Szeth is in shock and of no use. Dalinar forms a perpendicularity, infusing his radiance with stormlight. Ishar doesn't understand how it's possible. Dalinar explains he bonded with the Stormfather, explains that he needs a teacher and help restoring the radiance in the tower. Ishar thinks the enemy has corrupted the Stormfather. Ishar begins to take Dalinar's bond with the Stormfather and with Odium, a bond he doesn't understand, since Odium thinks Dalinar will fight against him. It pains Dalinar and his spren. Szeth puts a stop to it with his blade and asks where Ishar got his blade. Szeth collapses the perpendicularity. The Windrunners begin to stir since their bindings had been destroyed. Ishar explains that he did not kill the previous owner of the sword, that it was returned to him since the Shin served the heralds and were merely holding the sword for him. The Stormfather informs Dalinar that Ishar tried to steal their bond. The Windrunners all feel terrible. Szeth knows Ishar is lying. His people had no intention of returning Ishar's sword to him. Ishar denies it. Szeth's father gave the blade and thanked him for letting him die. Szeth charges Ishar. A charge of power is released when their blades meet, which sends both men backward. Ishar drops his blade and Dalinar notices a chip in it. Ishar opens a perpendicularity. As Dalinar gives the order to depart, Ishar speaks to him. He claims he can see clearly that all bondsmiths have a connection, that his sanity is slipping. His mind is broken and he isn't sure it can be mended. Perhaps you can restore me for a short time after an ideal is spoken near me. Everyone sees a little more clearly when a radiant touches the spiritual realms. For now, listen well. I have the answer, a way to fix the problems that beset us. Come to me in Shinovar. I can reset the Oath Pact, though I must be sane to do it. I must have help to... The voice stumbled as if warping. To defeat you, champion of Odium. That's 1161. Ishar claims he will fight again and that he cannot be defeated. He is almighty. Dalinar and his men take to the air. Dalinar watches the herald and his men step into the perpendicularity and make their way into Shadesmar. Navani and the sibling can create light together, which can drive Moash back. bring Fabrials to life, etc. However, the sibling is still weak from Raboniel's corruption. Navani realizes she needs to vent the void light in the system so that they can restart the tower's protections, etc. As she sets to work, Navani notices that Kaladin, who had achieved the fourth ideal, is moving toward her in order to rescue her. Navani gets his attention by making lights flash on the walls. Navani informs him that the pillar is secure and he needs to go to the market to inform their enemies that they should retreat. Kaladin obeys. Navani gets to work. Dalinar and his men linger above Ishar's camp. Although the Windrunners feel horrible, the Stormfather explains it was because Ishar connected them to the earth and made them feel as though the stones were part of their bodies. That the powers of bondsmiths are that of creation, once limited by honor but no more. The Stormfather claims to have never liked Ishar, whom he had seen as ambitious. Although Ishar could not take all the blame for Ashen, humankind's first home's destruction, he was the one Odium tricked first into experimentation with the surges. Sigil wants to depart. Dalinar wants to wait a bit longer to see if Ishar returns. Dalinar speaks to Szeth, who wishes to know how Ishar knew about his people. Szeth says he must prepare for his next ideal, a quest in which he returns to his people and faces them. Explains that his people have all but 3 of the honor blades. He must go on his journey alone and prepare. Ishar should not have known. When Ishar doesn't return, Dalinar gives the order to be taken down so they can explore Ishar's tent and see if he left anything of value like notes on the applications of bondsmith powers. Aiden stands with the other humans in the atrium against the fused and their allies. He is rescued by glittering blue shardplate, along with the bead and a few others. Kaladin had returned to protect them. Kaladin bears the siblings' word as lights burst on the walls and ceiling. The ground trembles, the Stormform's lightning is extinguished. Deepest ones go limp, trapped in the stone. Heavenly ones fall to the ground, unconscious. The radiants begin to stir, etc. Kaladin announces that the enemy must turn in their weapons to remain unscathed, as long as they promise to tell him that he's going to enjoy hearing what he looked like when he discovered what transpired today. Dalinar and company enter Ishar's tent, which smells with a chemically harsh odor. What they find is something the Stormfather claims is not possible: the corpses of Spren, such as a cryptic. Sigil finds a ledger which he feels contains a list of experiments and notes, such as cryptics and ash spren are impossible to bring over properly with our current knowledge. The process of creating bodies for them results in a physical form that collapses upon itself immediately. It appears their physiology works against the fundamental laws of the physical realm. That's on 1168. The Stormfather instructs Dalinar to leave immediately, so they can warn his children. Dalinar agrees. The group is to grab anything they think may prove useful before meeting him outside. It's time to depart. Moash flees as the tower comes alive. His connection to Odium had been pushed away. He begins to feel pain over his actions, pain he didn't want and had given away. Pain for killing Teft. Moash pushes himself harder. He's desperate to escape the tower. He's afraid, and the light in the tower seems too bright. Everything grows worse. He feels like he is suffocating. Moash makes his way outside and falls from the sky into the snow. The stormlight keeps him alive, but doesn't fully heal him. He had been promised he wouldn't feel any more, but feels. Moash can hear cheers, sounds of joy. Moash realizes he isn't sorry for killing Teft, only for the feelings they caused. He didn't want the pain. Moash knows he should have died, but is found and collected by some heavenly ones, who give him stormlight to heal. Odium's gift returns to Moash, making him breathe easier. The heavenly ones drop him off at a camp with the others who had managed to escape the tower. No matter how much stormlight Moash consumes, however, his eyes will not mend. Moash had gone blind. Chapter 112, Terms. Dalinar and company arrive back at their Amuli war camp just before the storm hits. Dalinar feels defeated. He had not accomplished what he wished. He soon receives news that the tower and oath gates are functioning, etc., and sends word to Navani that he will go to her soon. He also wishes to meet with Yasna and the Prime after the storm. The Stormfather informs Dalinar the sibling is fully awakened. Dalinar had learned she had bonded with Navani. Dalinar is drawn into a vision with Odium, who knows Dalinar was supposed to be his champion. Dalinar realizes that Odium had appeared to him for the first time in a year because Odium had lost Uruthuru, and there was a new bondsmith. He had failed again. He also thought Dalinar was working with Ishar. Dalinar uses this to his advantage, and the knowledge that Odium feared those who refused to obey him, and that he may come fully into his power, contributing further to Odium's loss of control of his own plans. Odium brings up their agreement to a contest of champions. They still need to set terms. Dalinar has Odium review the terms he had discussed with Yasna. Odium is angered by what he reads. He realizes it was written by Sephandrius, who has always plagued him. Although he says he won't break his word, Odium explains that their contract will be void, and he will be in Dalinar's power if he does. The opposite would be true if Dalinar broke it. and the restrictions Honor placed upon me, chaining me to the Rosharan system and preventing me from using my powers on most individuals, would be void. But that is not going to happen, and I am not going to break my word, because if I did, it would create a hole in my soul, which would let cultivation kill me. That's on 1174. However, Odium can't agree to the terms because the Everstorm changed things. The fused are free now, etc. He can't agree because he is incapable of doing what is asked of him without destroying himself. Dalinar won't agree, but Odium offers to agree to less. Odium explains that Roshar is a training ground. He needs soldiers for a battle for everything amongst the gods. Odium agrees to everything but containing the fused in Voidspren. In exchange for you giving up one thing you wanted, I will give up one in turn. If I win, I will give up my grand plans for Roshar. I will leave this planet for 1,000 years and abandon all I've worked for here. I give you and the singers freedom to make your own peace. Freedom for you and freedom for me. This is all I ask for my victory. As you represent Honor, you can relax his prohibitions on me. No matter what happens in this contest, you never have to worry about me again. All I want is away from this miserable system. That's on 1175. Dalinar wonders who to trust more, Wit or Odium. Realizes he doesn't trust Odium at all. Honor must have died to trap Odium on Roshar for a good reason. Dalinar asks to be returned. Odium wants to make an agreement and to stop delaying. The pair argue back and forth on what they want, and Odium makes it clear that he wants Dalinar to join the Fused if he wins. Eventually, the pair draw up and agree to these terms. A contest of champions to the death. On the 10th day of the month Pala, 10th hour. We each send a willing champion allowed to meet at the top of Urithiru, otherwise unharmed by either side's forces. If I win that contest, you will remain bound to the system, but you will return Alethkar and her Daz to me, with all of their occupants intact. You will vow to cease hostilities and maintain the peace, not working against my allies or kingdoms in any way. But if I win, I keep everything I've won, including your homeland. I still remain bound to this system, and will still cease hostilities, but I will have your soul to serve me, immortal. That's on 1178. Dalinar agrees to the terms to prevent years of fighting, death, etc., and intends to serve as his own champion. Chapter 113, Emotion. The sibling isn't sure what to make of her bond with Navani. Navani says they will work together in order to forge an acceptable path forward. Navani discovers Raboniel is dying. She was severely injured by Moash, and knows she will return mad if reborn. She asks Navani to kill her with anti-void light, and to make sure she puts an end to it. They sing the Rhythm of War together before Navani kills Raboniel. She feels terrible. Navani apologizes to the sibling for finding the light, which can kill Spren. The sibling accepts it. The recreants ensured consequences became those of the Spren as well. Navani takes the special dagger in her notebook, leaves a note on Raboniel's corpse that it is not to be moved without consulting her, and departs to put the tower back in order. Taravangian awakes stupider than he had ever been, and emotional. He receives a note from Renarin saying he's sorry. It is accompanied by 2 glowing gemstones. Taravangian wonders what he could be sorry for. The High Storm arrives and Taravangian fears he knows what he has done. Realizes that the gems were given to him so he could summon Odium. He fears the end is near. Szeth arrives. Szeth wants to know how long Taravangian has known about his father's death. Taravangian tries to convince him to use the sword. Szeth refuses and breaks the gemstones Taravangian had been given, despite his pleading, releasing strange, transparent windspren that trailed red light. Szeth refuses to be manipulated by Taravangian again, have his hands stained by murder, which Taravangian claims was done to save the world. Szeth claims Taravangian broke him, took advantage of his attempts to maintain his honor. A golden light appears as Szeth prepares to kill Taravangian. Odium appears. He's upset he has lost Dalinar again and is bound by an agreement he does not desire. He wonders how his enemies know how to act against him, accuses Taravangian of betrayal, wonders what the man has done. Taravangian fears he failed, but soon realizes both the sword and Odium are present. Szeth stabs Taravangian in the chest. Taravangian is filled with a sense of bravery as he begins to die. Taravangian is pulled into the place between worlds by Odium along with Szeth's sword. Taravangian grabs the sword and stabs Odium in the chest with it. It begins to drink the god's essence. Taravangian realizes Szeth had killed him and feels angry. Odium cries out, his golden plane shattered. It turns to darkness. The figure that contained Odium's power, the person who controlled it, evaporated, taken by the sword. That alone was so much investiture that Taravangian felt the sword grow dull in his fingers, full, lethargic. As when a hot brand was shoved into a barrel of water, there was an initial hiss, but this power was too vast for the sword to drink. It killed the person holding that power, however, which left a hole, a need. A vacuum, like a gemstone suddenly without stormlight, it reached out, and Taravangian felt a distinct connection to it. Passion, hatred. Today, Taravangian was only passion, hatred, fear, anger, shame, awe, bravery. The power loved these things, and it surged around him, enveloping him. His soul vibrated. Take me, the power pled, speaking not with words, but in emotion. You are perfect. I am yours. Taravangian hesitated briefly, then thrust his hands into the well of power, and ascended to godhood, becoming Odium. That's on 1186-7. Chapter 114, Broken Gods. Kaladin transfers Venli and her friends to the Shattered Plains via the Oath Gate. Elaine had become a Truth Watcher. He had bonded a spren named Tumi, the one who had been watching him from the Kremling's heart. He was a misspren of both honor and odium, since he had been touched by Shaw Not. Renarin knows. He suggested Rlain and told the Unmade about him. They're kinder in awe of Rlain, whom they refer to as the Bridger of Minds. They are honored. Upon making the transfer to Narak, Leshwe and her allies are welcome to remain. She declines. They do not wish to fight their own and desire a life outside the war with the listeners. Venli knows they'll find their way. Kaladin reminds them of the Queen's promise. Should they and their friends need refuge, they will provide shelter. Venli and the others depart. Rlain tells her to write him when she finds the others. Rlain had chosen to remain behind until Renarin returned, and because he feared that if the humans won the war, they may choose to enslave his kind again. He felt that he needed to keep an eye on them. Rlain intends to visit the listeners and knows the tower is his home. He is both Radiant and Bridge 4. Kaladin invites Rlain to go and send Teft off. Taravangian becomes the power. He begins to understand the Cosmere on a fundamental level. He saw his predecessor's weakness, how he had been enslaved by the power. Taravangian realizes he has two sides, knowledge and understanding, possible futures on the other, fury. In the mortal realm, he is a burnt-out corpse. Raised, Taravangian's predecessor. Szeth wasn't aware because of Nightblood's work. Taravangian realizes they think it's his corpse because Szeth didn't notice Odium's arrival, didn't understand how he had drawn Nightblood to ultimately be consumed by it. Since they thought him dead, Taravangian realizes he was free to both destroy and plan. Taravangian is startled when he becomes aware of a growing power nearby, a godly power. He was not alone. All of Bridge 4, with the exception of Rock, whom Scar and Drehi explained would not be returning, give Teft a king's funeral, soul-casting him to stone. Fenderana was going to be sculpted as well and kept next to him. They would remain in a room with other ancient Radiants who stood as stone sentries. After the funeral and celebration of Teft and his life, Kaladin speaks with Syl. They are both going to miss Teft. Syl was mostly herself now that the tower was back in good working order. Some of the emotions she had experienced, the sorrow, were a result of Raboniel's actions. Kaladin realizes the vision he'd had of Tien had let him let go of a heavy burden, mainly in the shape of shame. Kaladin hugs Teft's statue. He acknowledges that he and Syl need to keep moving forward, which involved choosing a course for his life now that the crisis had been averted. Taravangian grows increasingly capable and is visited by cultivation. He understands now. Cultivation had required someone who could tempt the power as well as someone who would be able to control it. I asked for the capacity to save the world. I thought it was the intelligence, but later wondered if it was the ability to feel. In the end, it was both. You were preparing me for this. Odium's power is the most dangerous of the 16, she said. It ruled Raised, driving him to destroy. It will rule you too, if you let it. They showed you this possibility, I assume, Taravangian said, but this isn't nearly as certain as I imagined it. It shows you things that can happen, but not the hearts of those who act. How did you dare try something like this? How did you know I'd be up to the challenge? I didn't, she said. I couldn't. You were heading this direction. All I could do was hope that if you succeeded, my gift would work. That I had changed you into someone who could bear this power with honor. That's on 1192-3. Taravangian is awed by the power, the knowledge he had, and it could accomplish his goals, such as saving his city and ending the war. The contract could accomplish that. Taravangian knows his predecessor's plans and had some of his knowledge. The Cosmere was in chaos and ruled by fools, broken gods. He realizes there is much to do and that Dalinar had set himself up to lose, that he could defeat him. Cultivation asked Taravangian to come with her, so she can teach him about the power, so he can control it and be better than Raise. He agrees by taking her hand and is happy because he was finally free of his frail body and position, which had always controlled and defined him in his eyes. He could do what he wanted now and was determined to save everyone. Chapter 115, Testament. Shallan had located her first cryptic, whom she'd named Testament. She appears better, as does Maya, which gives Shallan hope that Testament could be repaired. Shallan had told Adolin her secrets about Mraize, the dagger, and cube. Kolek had helped Adolin and Shallan open the cube, which contained a strange spren Wit referred to as a Seion. Its name is Allah, and it acted like an abused child. It would not take the freedom it was offered. Radiant remained with Shallan. She would be absorbed like Veil when they discovered the proper path. Shallan realizes Pattern had acted like a newly bonded friend on Yasna's ship because he had been one. She has 2 sharp blades and many questions about her past, about Deadeyes, who had never existed before the Recreants. Shallan contacts Mraize with the cube and tells him what happened to Vale. She thinks of the other world Kalek had told her about, how he wanted to get off Roshar to avoid the world's downfall and Odium torturing the Heralds again. Mraize is displeased. She was a Ghostblood. Shallan says she is not. None of them were, not fully. They are leaving. Mraize asks her not to leave to consider the cost, her brothers, which had been smuggled out of the tower. She thanks him for the Scion, the ability to communicate across realms. Mraize claims Shallan will never find the answers she seeks. She says she has all the things she needs and that her discussions with Kalek have revealed that he thinks the reason Mraize is hunting him is because of Ba Ado Mistram, the one who gifted the singers forms of power and stole the singers' minds, turning them into Parshmen when she was trapped. Shallan wants to know why Mraize wants the gemstone that contains the Unmade, what he intends to do with it. There is no answer. Shallan announces she will be returning to Earth soon with the Honorspren who have decided to bond with humans. Upon her arrival, she expects to find him and his people gone and vows to find the gemstone before him. Threatens him, should he get in her way. Mraize warns her this won't end well. She is opposed to the most powerful organization in the Cosmere. Shallan is not afraid and asks Mraize to deliver a message to Thydakar's avatar for her. They're through with his meddling, his influence over her people is no more, and that Wit had a message as well, to deal with his own planet and not make him beat Thydakar up again. Mraize informs Shallan that she is now at war with the Ghostbloods. Shallan replies that he always has been, and she has chosen her side. She breaks contact. Adolin asserts they can handle the Ghostbloods. Although she had gone with the others, Venli approaches the listener camp alone, bows trained on her. Eventually, she is greeted by Thud, who is surprised to see her in her glow as she takes in Stormlight. Thud informs Venli that her mother still lives, but her mind is gone. Venli announces she may have a way to heal her. Thud calls Venli a traitor, doesn't believe her, because she would have had them all killed. She understands, but insists she's trying to be better and asks that he listen. After informing him that she's not sure if the enemy knows of their location, they were found by humans and Raboniel had known before her death. She isn't sure who Raboniel had told. Venli explains their gods have returned, that they are going to have to protect themselves and change to make sure they are left in peace. Venli shows him a spren, explains there are more like her that wish to bond to make their bondmates radiant. Thud is wary because of what transpired the last time Venli came to them with spren. Venli insists this will be different because she has changed and time will prove the truth of her words. Venli asks to be taken to her mother. She's taken. Jaxlum doesn't recognize Venli, and their people are losing their songs without her. No one else who had known them had escaped. Venli releases a light spren, which spins around Jaxlum before seeking her gem heart during a rendition of the Song of Mornings, Jaxlum's favorite. Venli promises to restore the songs to Thud and speaks of those she brought with her. She understands if she is turned aside, but hopes her friends will be considered since the listeners will need allies if they are to survive in the world as it is now. Thud explains they are not alone. Things had changed for them as well as for Venli. They have allied with chasm fiends, which had helped them escape the chasms during the storm. Venli hears a voice, her mother's, asking if it's her. Jaxlum's eyes had focused. They could really see Venli. Venli hears a distant feminine voice within her mind. It says that her words have now been accepted. Chapter 116, Mercy. Kaladin speaks with Dalinar, whom he feels was right to relieve him of duty. He still has a lot of healing to do and wishes to continue his work with people with battle shock. Dalinar gives him permission. Dalinar informs Kaladin of the deal he struck with Odium, that the contest of champions is set for 10 days from now. Dalinar intends to serve as his own champion and knows he needs to master his powers in order to prepare for the contest. Dalinar feels Ishi, the creator of the Oath Pact and original binder of the Fused, can help. Dalinar asks Kaladin to help him retrieve Ishi, help him overcome his madness, so Ishi can in turn aid Dalinar. Kaladin is shocked, but doesn't seem opposed to the idea. Dalinar returns Kaladin's flute to him. He explains that Lift, whom Dalinar believes to be fine, had found it in a merchant's bin in the breakaway. Kaladin asks if she had mentioned the identity of the merchant. The pursuer awakens, screaming in rage because he had been killed by Kaladin twice. He finds himself in the dark, with a being who refers to him as the Defeated One. The pursuer realizes it is El, the Fused with no title. The pursuer is informed that their new god didn't want to wait for him to be reborn, so he was reborn the old way. The pursuer asks for Voidlight so he can recharge and earn back his legacy, so he can seek revenge on Kaladin and all those he loved. El reveals that the pursuer was summoned quickly to serve as a test subject to see if a Voidlight sphere that warped the air around it, which had been embedded into a knife, really worked. El plunges the knife into the Defeated One, ripping his soul apart. Kaladin is amazed by the positive transformation the tower is undergoing. The air is warm, etc. Kaladin locates the shop Lift had told Dalinar about. He finds some of Bridge 4's old things things like sigils, brush pens, and a mini wooden horse. He and Syl are in awe. Kaladin explains that he had lost the carving in Alethkar before coming to the Shattered Plains. Tien had given it to him the day they were recruited for the military, and it had been taken with his other belongings when he had been enslaved. After paying for it and the other things he wanted, he heads to the tavern to meet with Dabeed, Norrell, and the other battle-shocked people he had rescued. Kaladin had promised Teft that he would join the meetings and take care of himself. Tomorrow, he would accompany Dalinar in his quest to save Ishi. Dalinar speaks to his wife. He feels he should have had more faith in her ability to deal with the tower's problems. Navani says she will introduce Dalinar to the sibling when the Spren is ready. Navani feels as though the deal her husband struck with Odium was a good one, although his sacrifice worries her. Dalinar wonders if he would ever feel ready for the contest, feels something is wrong, has changed. He knows they need to be ready for the coming days. Dalinar lets Navani know, second-guessing himself, won't pick Kaladin as his champion, thinks there's something he's missing. He feels he left Odium too much room to continue fighting before the contest. Navani knows they'll figure everything out, how to live in harmony with the singers, etc. After Navani departs, Dalinar speaks with the Stormfather, who admits that Dalinar was wise to provide Kaladin more time, to show mercy. Dalinar thinks it's important for him to learn of mercy. It'll make the Spren more human. The Stormfather doesn't want that, but sees change as a possibility. Dalinar is glad. That's all it takes. The Stormfather says Dalinar is wrong. He understands mercy and has shown it, occasionally. Dalinar is surprised and wonders when. Chapter 117, One Final Gift, 14 months ago. The battle for Narak rages above Eshonai, who is trapped in the chasms. The other listeners were summoning the Everstorm. Eshonai had been defeated by a human shardbearer but wanted to return to the fight. She begins to make her way back and realizes a high storm is coming. The two storms clash. The chasm floods and Eshonai is forced to fight for her life against the water. She hears the rhythm of war and attunes it and sees a small spren shaped like a shooting star. Eshonai holds on until the water slows, realizes her plate was broken and she was injured. She closes her eyes and awakens in a land filled with light. Eshonai is greeted by the Rider of Storms, who informs her that she was radiant when she died, which allowed her to live for a while without breathing. She will pass into eternity soon. Eshonai feels her life was a failure. She had given her people to the enemy, died alone and defeated, and betrayed her ancestors' gift. The Rider of Storms feels the opposite. She had made the same choice as those who came before her and given away power in the name of freedom. She knows the ancient listeners in a way that few ever have or will. Eshonai thanks him. The Rider of Storms decides to give her one final gift. Eshonai becomes a storm and rides it with him. He knows she had always wanted to know what lay beyond the next hill. Eshonai sees the entire world and realizes the world was the rhythms, begins to see how it all fits together. Afterward, Eshonai fades. She understood the rhythms in a way no one ever could because they had not viewed the world as she had. The Rider of Storms bids her farewell as she passes into the eternities, excited to see what it beheld. Epilogue, Dirty Tricks. Wit meets with Odium. They speak of the contract. Wit is convinced Dalinar bested Odium. Odium vows to destroy Wit. He desires vengeance. Wit senses something odd during the conversation. Odium had never asked his opinion before. He had wanted to know who Wit would choose as his champion. Odium vows to defeat Dalinar and use it as a stepping stone to do whatever he wants. A horribly wrong power slams into Wit. Odium realizes that Wit stores excess memories since he has lived longer than a mortal should. Wit worries about the destruction of the breaths that held his memories. He experiences true terror. Odium doesn't believe it will cause harm. He knows his predecessor's agreements will allow him to. Wit is back in the world. The past is repeating itself, but something feels off. Wit isn't sure what exactly. Wit has another meeting with Odium. After a while he leaves, but Odium's presence remains behind. Wit wonders if something is wrong. He decides not to worry. This was working. The novel ends with the line, "After all, Wit's first face-to-face meeting with Odium in over 1,000 years had gone exactly as he had imagined." That's on 1219. And that concludes Book 4 of the Stormlight Archive. Now that I've taken some time to finish up my summary of Rhythm of War, the fourth novel in Brandon Sanderson's Stormlight Archive, I want to take some time to just talk about it. This mass of a novel, this tome that is finally concluded with a whole lot of drama. I think the first thing I'm going to comment about is my sadness over some of the deaths in this novel. There's a part of me that's very happy that Sanderson is one of those authors that just doesn't give a darn and will actually kill off characters, but he always kills off the ones I don't want to die and keeps the ones I don't like around. Like when my boy Rock died, I was a very sad panda, and then he killed Teft. Raboniel was growing on me, and then he didn't kill Navani. I'm still salty. When she bonded with the sibling, I genuinely wanted to throw my book across the room. I probably would have broken something because it is a massive book, but it would have been worth it because Navani makes me want to scream.
I think it's good that Sanderson is willing to kill off characters, and he picks good times to kill them off because they're the times that have the most emotional impact, and they're used to further the story. And in a lot of cases, they're used to further Kaladin, because we've had a couple of scenarios now where he advanced to the next level of words based on somebody dying. And I really like the culmination of his story and how we were left wondering what the words were going to be for him to move on to the next stage. And I think there was no other set of words that they could have fell on that would have meant as much to the character as these did, because Tien's death was something that has weighed on him since we first were introduced to the character, and his feeling like a failure and that general like depression and miasma and that feeling of uselessness has kind of floated around him for as long as we've known this character. And for him to finally let that weight go, that weight off his shoulders, allows him to soar, and it works on a thematic and a visual level because it's like him dropping all that weight that's been holding him down, and now he can soar in the sky.
I agree. I like that the deaths have been used to move the plot along, accentuate more poignant moments, to highlight depths of darkness and things like that. I will say that I felt like Rock's death was a bit of a punch in the gut. Like, it happened at a time when Kaladin was already struggling with a sense of worthlessness. He had lost his role and his way, and he was trying to figure himself out. And then Rock goes off to die, and he's left with Teft predominantly as his only support. I mean, he has his other friends, but he's not really interacting with them the way he used to because he's not leading the Windrunners anymore. And then at the end of the novel, Teft and Lift get in a bad way. Teft winds up dying, and Kaladin is forced to come to terms finally with the fact that he just can't save anyone, or everyone rather, and he can only save certain people. There are people he can save, and if he doesn't act now, his father is going to go too. And it's enough to make him step up and save his father and also reconcile with his father, which I'm hoping leads to a bit of a cleaner book in the future, because while I understand that Kaladin and his father had different viewpoints, and I can respect those different viewpoints and where they're both coming from, Liren was a little bit too selfish and too stubborn. He didn't, as Jeremy has mentioned previously, just allow his family to go into hiding when they really should have gone into hiding because his views were so extreme to the point where they almost seem nonsensical. I mean, there are people in the world like that, but it almost felt like too much and just a little too strange.
It came off as something that was getting in the way of the story. And they even kind of lampshaded it with the interlude that we got with Kaladin's mother and her perspective kind of mirroring the reader's perspective when it comes to how he was acting. So when I got to that interlude, I was kind of vindicated seeing that, oh, it wasn't just me who feels like this about this character. I don't have the level of disdain for Navani as you do. I feel like this was going to be the result from the moment she started communicating with her. I didn't see this going any other way. The sibling was not going to randomly bond with Elaine, even though they kept, floating that out there, because Navani's the one who's been talking to her the whole time. So it makes sense that that would be eventually the culmination.
Well, Dabeed also spoke to her when he was passing the span read.
Yeah, but Navani was constantly talking to her, and it was a through line of the whole book. So if somebody was going to bond with her as a culmination of a plot line, it was going to be Navani. And you also can't spend as much time focusing on a character if you're not going to make that character a Radiant. They're eventually going to turn into a Radiant because that's what's going to make her relevant in the plot going forward. Yes, we have characters that are not Radiants, but they're not getting the kind of page time that Navani's been getting.
There is nothing that will ever make me appreciate this character. I agree a lot with how she was viewed in the prologue, that she kind of just goes with the flow, goes with the power is, and kind of latches onto things and therefore gains notoriety, like she gained it through her marriage. I find the way her chapters are presented, especially in this book, exceedingly boring. I don't like all the repetition of the experimentation, and yes, it's relevant to the plot. And there was a big discovery made that could change the tide of the war. And like, I can respect that as a plot point. I just didn't like how we got there, and I don't like her personality in general. I find her positively insufferable.
I honestly think a lot of the personalities of the characters kind of blend together after a while. I don't think that Sanderson, outside of a handful of characters, writes characters that are very different from each other. Wit is probably the most different character that he writes, and that is just because Wit is, I want to say, a self-insert character, because Wit is the character that goes through all of the Cosmere books, not just the Stormlight books. And, you know, Wit is exactly what his name implies, and that is witty. But I feel like most of the other characters have very similar personalities in terms of how they talk, and I think that is a product of this series more so than other series that I've read of his, because of the way that the society is here, that everybody's very samey. Everybody kind of lives up to the same social constructs and things like that, outside of like moving around them every once in a while. Like Lift is a little different from some of the other characters because of her upbringing, but I definitely feel like there's only a handful of characters that really step outside of the boxes that Sanderson kind of writes them into in this series.
I think there's certainly a lot of similarities between his characters, especially in terms of speech patterns. We see some differences with characters like Lift and Rock, for example, but I wouldn't describe them as the same. I think, for example, if we were to take Shallan and Kaladin, they're both Radiants, they both have dark pasts, they both have things that they're struggling with. Kaladin just deals with it in a more traditional depressive way, while Shallan has created separate personalities for herself to deal with everything and compartmentalize her trauma.
But I feel like Shallan, OG Shallan, dealt with it a lot of the same ways. The only reason Shallan is different, or was different for a while, is because she created all those alternate personalities. So those personalities were different, but baseline Shallan was very, base level, just like a lot of the other characters. I'm not saying I necessarily don't like how the characters are written. I'm just saying they come off as kind of samey.
I mean, it's arguable. Obviously, well, maybe not obviously, because say me and my sister have had the same upbringing. We grew up in the same house and we're two very different people, but because there are similarities in their environment, ultimately they're going to have some shared traits, some shared viewpoints, some shared ways of viewing the world. But then we have people like Buyer/Moash who just doesn't accept that and is like, I'm gonna side with the quote bad guys, if you will, and murder everybody because you didn't do what you should have done to protect everybody, or whatever strange reason he comes up with.
I feel like Moash has to end up being the champion unless they're going to introduce another character in the next book. We're 10 days away from the contract, or the contest of champions, by the end of this book. I don't see there being enough time to introduce another character to become the champion. It's got to be Moash.
He's blind now, though. Would New Odium, which is also very interesting, I think having Taravangian ascend and become a god was an interesting choice, which we can talk more about momentarily if you'd like.
I think that worked very well for Taravangian because he was kind of always looking to go beyond his restrictions and looking to have the power. They say it right in the chapter, looking to have the power to save his people, and now he does. But they kind of leave it on his chapter at the very least, or his portion of the chapter, they kind of leave it on that he's going to, be better than his predecessor, and he's not going to be controlled by the power. But that feels like it can't be the case, because if he ends up not getting ruled by the power, or he ends up just being, unless he just, becomes kind of a different character once he's got this power, it seems like it eliminates a huge enemy, a huge threat, if Odium is no longer Odium.
Yeah, the other thing that's commented in that chapter where he ascends is he knows how to defeat Dalinar. But ultimately, I don't think he ever wanted Odium to win, so I don't know if he might just throw everything. Like, originally, he sided with the humans. He's now in this position where he has to learn how to manage and contend with this power that he's unaccustomed to holding. But he was never really on Odium's side. He just did it because he thought, hey, this is better than probably losing. In fact, almost definitely losing. So let's just do what I can and make a crappy situation slightly less crappy.
Yeah, the thing that I can think about it in terms of the grand plan is once he gets the power, he sees the grand war that's going on. Essentially the conflict, the Cosmere level conflict that's beyond Roshar, and maybe he realizes what Odium was trying to express, that Roshar was only the training ground and this was only kind of a stepping stone to get the ability to go out and interact with the greater Cosmere. I haven't read pretty much any of the straight Cosmere books that deal with the larger thing, so I'm not exactly sure how that is. I plan on getting into them. I own them. But if he now takes his power and realizes maybe Odium had a certain level of, rightness to what he was trying to do, and that he still needs to accomplish the goals that Odium was trying to accomplish before he can, in effect the greater Cosmere. Because this is not something that Sanderson hasn't done before. Kind of spoilers for Mistborn, but the Mistborn series has the Lord Ruler, and the Lord Ruler is the main bad guy of the first book, but it's found out that he was actually, doing the things that he was doing to kind of stomp out and prevent a greater threat. So this is not necessarily something that's foreign to Sanderson.
I guess we'll have to see where he decides to go with it. There's a part of me that kind of hopes Taravangian throws it, but at the same time, I kind of just think for Dalinar's development, it might be better if he doesn't and he feels like he's actually taking part in a contest. I think it might be interesting to see Taravangian struggle even more with the corruption of the power on his system, fight, his human instincts, which is protect the other humans down on what was his Earth or Roshar, and the cravings that Odium has for sheer chaos.
What do you think about the final, the epilogue? I really loved and hated the epilogue for different reasons, because it always ends with Wit. Every book ends with an epilogue by Wit, and this one started off really cool, but then ended on a moment where you're like, oh man, I don't even really know what happened.
I actually really liked the fact that the final line could be interpreted in a few different ways. It reads, after all, Wit's first face-to-face meeting with Odium in over 1,000 years had gone exactly as he had imagined, which is in 1219. And you can take this in a number of ways. It's first, Wit's meeting had gone exactly as he had imagined it would. He knew that he would lose his memories. Or it could be Wit thinks it went exactly how he imagined it would because he can't remember he had lost his memories, or something else that we're not accounting for. And I like that ambiguity. Like, did he plan to lose his memories? Does he just think things went well? Does he think he came out ahead? Does a part of him know those things are missing? Like, because I imagine if you're someone who's lived a really long time and you're just kind of thinking back on your life one day and then you realize you can't draw up those memories anymore, you might know there's a problem, but it's unclear as to whether or not that's how this worked for him.
Yeah, I think part of me was frustrated with it because I know it's not going to get answered right away. I knew I was going to have to wait for the next book, and I don't think it's going to get answered immediately. It may get answered in the epilogue of the next book. If I were going to predict something, we might get a definitive answer on what that line meant and the result of him playing around with his memories in the epilogue of the next book, because I assume it's going to be a Wit epilogue again. And I think that's just a long time to wait because you have to go through the whole story. Every time we get a Wit chapter, we don't know if he's being manipulated. We don't know why he's doing the things he's doing, because that ambiguity was always there with the character, but now it's going to be even more so. And I assume that this Odium that he met with was the Taravangian Odium.
Yes.
So this is a new version of Odium, and I guess that's probably why he was actually able to notice this thing that the other Odium hadn't known about, because he's looking through new eyes.
Yeah, I think if I had to guess, I would say that this is the Taravangian Odium, and that the old one might have known, but he might not have cared. To me, when Taravangian took over, it seemed like they had the same knowledge. It's just that the power and everything had corrupted Reyes so much that he was just kind of going insane with a desire to murder stuff.
Yeah, and it made sense because that version of Odium was the one that created the Thrill. So, and the Thrill was just like that, where it would be this surge of power and it would completely overtake the person that it was embodying. So it made sense that Odium himself at that moment would be like that version of him. But I do like the way that it was phrased at the end. I also like the fact that they actually called out breaths specifically, which is more tying threads to Warbreaker, because that was the magic system of Warbreaker. And so actually getting it kind of called out here and not just alluded to is kind of cool. But overall, I think this book was a marked improvement over the last book.
That's not really a contest, though.
That's true. The last book was really bad, but it could have not bounced back.
That's true.
And I feel like I was worried that it wasn't going to bounce back, because after the last book, I got a lot of thoughts in my head that, oh my God, we're going to have 7 books of this. And is he going to world build for the whole thing? Because that last book was just straight world building with crap plot.
Yeah.
So I was worried that we were going to have like 3 books in a row that was going to be all world building before we got a couple to resolve the conflict at the end. But I mean, I am wondering how we're going to get more books out of it. Like, I don't know how we're going to get 7 books out of this story, but you know, you have to have faith if you're going to continue it. And I think it bounced back, and I enjoyed the book, and revisiting it to go through for the summary and the reviews was really cool.
You're welcome, Jer.
Yes.
Glad to be of service.
And what are your thoughts on the book overall?
I would say it's definitely a lot stronger than the previous novel. Again, I don't think it's really a contest. I think the general consensus is Oathbringer is the weakest of the 4 novels that are currently out. I don't think I liked this one as much as A Way of Kings. I think A Way of Kings was probably my favorite because it focuses on Kaladin a lot more before he starts getting like super depressed, and I liked that element of him trying to figure things out, which yes, they're doing that here, but there was something about the way that it was done there that I appreciated a lot more, probably because it didn't have the like scientific classroom experimentation kind of thing they had going on with Navani, which doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just have different ways of liking how our magic system is explained, because I like this trial and error, learning it out organically kind of thing. Like a big series that I really like are the Cycle of Galand books, and they do the same thing. When he learns a new thing or he sees a new thing, we will spend sometimes multiple chapters of him going, oh, let me try this, and it failed. Let me try this. Oh, I got a little further. Oh, let me try this. It failed again. And I like that because I like it being organically built out. I think if I were going to power rank the series so far, I would say Words of Radiance is probably my favorite, followed by this one, then followed by Way of Kings, then followed by Oathbreaker.
We can agree Oathbringer is at the bottom of the
yes,
pack.
I, it's a huge gap, I think. I don't know if another book in the series could be as bad as that one.
We'll just have to find out, won't we?
Yes, we will find out.
And hope that there is nothing as bad as that.
Yes.
Or anywhere close.
I hope that stays at the bottom. But something that should be at the top of your list all the time is the content that we put out on this channel. If you like it, then please like the video. Let us know that it's at the top of your list. Comment. Let us know your thoughts on Part 5, the book as a whole, the series so far, your broader thoughts on the Cosmere. Please no spoilers in the comments about the other Cosmere books that I haven't read yet. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of this content going forward, and ring that bell so you know what's up. We'll catch you in the next one.
Bye, guys.
Hi, Tisha Valenza, aka Poison Ivy, and you've just been watching King's Entertainment Reviews. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and watch.